JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Hi, everybody. It's Daralyn Haywood, and my friend Dixie is here to co-host with us tonight. She just flew in. She is ex-military, one of my friends. We're not going to say her last name because she's super cool. Karen McRae canceled tonight. She was going to be a guest along with Matt Moratori. They are both vying for the state Senate seat. And I'm actually texting Matt Moratori right now.
Matt's actually online with you right now, man.
Oh, he is?
Yeah,
I'm
he's
here. I'm here.
Oh, hey, Matt.
How are
right,
you?
well, let me just finish my intro here.
Okay.
Matt, thanks for being on with us. I appreciate it.
Oh, thanks for having me.
You have been, everybody, of course, we're in Massachusetts. Matt Moratori has been a state rep representing Plymouth. Is it Plymouth, Pembroke? What are
No,
the
just
towns
Plymouth.
now?
No, just the
Plymouth.
first Plymouth, which is 3/4 of the town of Plymouth.
Yeah, so I grew up in Plymouth. I went to Mrs. Estes was my second school teacher at Mount Pleasant Elementary School. But Matt has been a state rep for 10 years. He's kind enough to join us tonight. He is in a contentious race with another Republican, Carrie McRae. Carrie's second time running for state Senate. And they are very close. So there's been a recount. This is the first time, that I've ever heard of a recount. I think there's a short amount of votes. But at first, Matt, before I give you a chance to speak, I just want to read a quote from Amy Carnevale, because she was kind enough to give us a quote for today. And the Mass GOP says, "We're closely monitoring the recount, and Mass GOP's executive and political director, John Milligan, will be on the ground to observe. Competitive primaries are a hallmark of a healthy party, and we are pleased with the level of competition observed thus far. The Mass GOP stands ready to support whoever Massachusetts Republicans have chosen to best represent their values and communities against a scandal-prone Democrat currently representing the district." So, Matt, can you tell us what made you run for state Senate at this point? And after that, if you could speak a little bit, if you're able to, a little bit about the recount and explain to our listeners a little bit about how that works.
Sure. I'll be happy to. First of all, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate that. Just a little bit of my background in the political world. I actually was on the finance committee in Plymouth in 2005. I was appointed by the town moderator at the time, who's still a town moderator, Steve Trifoletti. My wife was an attorney and was working with him, and he needed somebody on the finance committee. So I went on, didn't know what it was about, but went on and was on there for 5 years. A seat opened up on the Board of Selectmen in 2010, and I was the vice chair of the finance committee at the time. And people,
what's the budget there, Matt? What's the budget in Plymouth?
Right now, it's over 200 million. It's about 230 million. When I started out in 2005, it was somewhere around 130, 140 million. So
I just don't understand why our budgets keep increasing uncontrollably.
No, absolutely, because we don't. I'll tell you why. Well, let me finish up first, and I'll tell you why. Okay. What I think, at least. So then I was vice chair of the finance committee. Then a seat opened up on the Board of Selectmen. A bunch of people, the same people, said, "Why don't you run for selectman?" I did. I won twice, 2010, 2013, and then this seat opened up once. Senate President Therese Murray decided to retire. Vinnie DiMacedo was the state rep in Plymouth, and he decided to go for that seat, and he won, and I won as well in 2014. So I really had never thought I'd be doing any of this, but here I am doing this. And I believe that I'm very fiscally conservative, and I believe we don't do zero budgeting. And in the business world, and I come from the business world,
What do you do in the business world, or what did you do? And do you do that simultaneously with your state rep seat?
Right now, I used to own child daycare centers. We owned it for 20 years, but I was in the process of selling them last year and finished selling the last one early this year. So got out of that business. I had planned on getting out of that. And now I've been a nursing home administrator since 1991. I
Oh
haven't
my gosh.
practiced as a nursing home administrator since COVID. But we do have a company that does consulting in Massachusetts, but I'm one
Hopefully
of
it's not connected to Bennett Walsh.
I don't know who that is, but no, I don't think so.
It wasn't he the guy who ran the, I could be wrong in the name, but wasn't he the man who ran the old soldiers home in Holyoke?
Oh, I forget
The
who it
nursing home
was.
for
Yeah,
the
that
soldiers.
was
Maybe I have his name wrong.
Yeah, I know who you're talking about it, but he wasn't even a licensed nursing home administrator, which floored me when I found that out. Because you have to be licensed in every other nursing home in Massachusetts. You have to have a license from Massachusetts to do that.
Well, I would hope so. Now, why wouldn't Charlie Baker check something like that? It seems like, throwing somebody to the wolves.
Yep, that has since changed. So now
that's good.
Yeah. So the budgeting, I think I always believe in zero budget. So you don't build on the budget from the year before. I think what you do is you take a zero budget and you build a budget from there based on what you think the revenues are going to be. And what we're doing in Massachusetts, we just keep adding revenue by adding taxes and fees. And I don't think
how many people have left? I mean, you have access probably to a lot more information than a regular person does, but the information that I had says that we have 49,000 people have left the state.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know the exact number, but it is in the thousands on a weekly basis that people are leaving. Particularly, and there's two different groups of it. Really, it's the people who are retired, and I believe the millionaires tax really put a strain on those folks. That they have left the state and they're living in places like Florida and New Hampshire and the Carolinas. And I also think what's really happening now too is we're losing the people from the younger people from the colleges. As you know, we have some of the best universities and colleges in the entire world, and they come here. And in the past, they would stay here after they graduated, but now they can't afford it. So
if you look at rents in South Boston, for instance, which is right around the corner from UMass Boston.
Yeah.
I mean, though that's all working class families where if they sell their 3-decker right now, they're set for the rest of their life. They probably bought it for $8,000 on, on E Street.
Right.
So, but what I wanted to ask you about specifically was when we talk about the budgets, how do you put the budget together, and what's the responsibility of the state reps to kind of rein in any kind of spending? I mean, like this $1 billion, where did this $1 billion go? We've been asking Maura Healey where this $1 billion went for illegal aliens. And I also want to focus on Dylan Fernandez too, because you and Carrie are both Republican candidates. You're an incumbent, obviously, but in a different seat, are running against Dylan Fernandez. And I happen to have a picture of Dylan with all these illegal aliens, and they're flashing gang signs. And it's MS-13. And we haven't figured out what the other two gang signs are. We have some gang investigators that are looking into that. But how does that sit with you when you have Dylan Fernandez? He actually went down to Hyannis, which is a town, is a village in the town, or actually a city in Barnstable that I live in. And he went drinking with all these people. And how does that comport with the financial burden on people right now? And what do you have to say about Dylan Fernandez?
Yeah, well, first of all, with regard to the $1 billion plus, and it's a lot more than $1 billion that we're spending on these migrants and most of them illegal migrants coming into the state. We, as a Republican caucus, as you know, there's 29 of us out of 100, out of 200, 4 in the Senate and 25 in the House, and we've been united for well over a year now in trying to change the right to shelter law. We tried to say, okay, you have to be a Massachusetts resident for 12 months or 6 months or 9 months or 3 months. We also block budgets. We also block funding for it. And it gets overridden every time by the Democrats because they're leading the charge here in Massachusetts. One of the things that we're running on, Carrie and I always talked about, was a balance of power, that we need more Republicans. We need to have 2 teams on a field, and right now we don't. And
let me just interject there, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
And Dixie's here, my friend. She's retired from the military. We're not going to say her last name because she's super cool, but she's going to be with us today.
Hi, Dixie.
So, hey, how are you?
Good, and you?
Fabulous. So, I totally just lost my train of thought. It happens when you're 58. And Matt,
Something about
Matt
Republicans.
has 6 daughters, as
Yes.
well as I think Carrie has 2 daughters and a couple of grandchildren. So,
Yeah.
so you both. What I thought was great, and I heard this from Carrie, and you can confirm or deny or whatever you want to do, but I heard her say, I believe it was on WXTK, that you and she both agreed to a recount, or I don't know who did it first, but you're united in this recount. Is that correct?
Well, let me clarify a little bit. The day after the election, the morning after, Carrie called me and indicated to me that, she's thinking of doing a recount because it was so close. And I said to her at that point, I said, I probably would too, if I was you. And we kind of talked about it, but we agreed at that point that whatever decides to happen with a recount, we need to go forward with going after Dylan Fernandez as the Democratic opponent, because we need to have a Republican in the seat. So we
Right.
both agreed to do that. And then later on, after I was able to speak to some experts and a couple of lawyers, we did have a conversation in the early afternoon on Wednesday, and I said, Carrie, obviously you do what you want to do, but we're finding out that to turn over 40, I think it was 48 votes at that point, to turn that over is almost impossible to do because of the electronic machines they have nowadays. And 7 out of the 8 communities do have electronic machines. One does not. Plimpton does hand count still. But there are only like 204 ballots.
Well,
there.
what about the mail-in ballots?
Yeah.
And what I wanted to
Yeah.
actually compliment the two of you. This wasn't a criticism. So let me just go ahead with my compliment, because because I've texted to you and I've spoken to you, and Carrie knows, and not that the 3 of us have agreed, but you understand that we are going to fully support you if you're the victor, and Carrie understands we're going to fully support her if she's the victor. So we made that agreement very early on. I want to say like maybe December, right?
Right.
So this wasn't like to pit you against Carrie in any way.
Yeah.
Although Carrie doesn't have a record and you do. What I wanted to focus on tonight was the mail-in ballots. What do we do about these mail-in ballots? Because when I ran for state committee, I never bothered reporting it. I should have reported it, but I was just so disgusted with the whole system. All these mail-in ballots poured in, and then all of a sudden my blanks, and the blank is, when someone skips your name, my blank turned into votes for my opponent. And she was a 12-year incumbent, and I think we were within 13 points. So that's, I think if there's like 6,000 votes, that's like 800 votes or something. So for a 12-year incumbent. So, I mean, I think you would admit that Carrie coming so close to someone who's been in politics for a decade is fairly significant.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not going to take anything away from her.
No, not at all. And if I may, we knew this race was going to be very close. We knew it. And that's why we poured so much into it. We raised $89,000. We knocked over 11,000 doors. My wife sent letters to many folks down the Cape area that we're close with. I mean, everything possible we did because we knew it was going to be close.
But what did Carrie spend? You spent $89,000.
No, I raised $89,000.
Oh, okay. You didn't spend it though.
Yeah. No, I haven't spent all that. No. But my point is that we knew she would run a spirited campaign, and we knew she was a formidable opponent, so we did not take it lightly whatsoever.
What did you think about Carrie getting fired for free speech when she was supposed to be a teacher in Hanover?
I don't know too much about it, but I do worry about the free speech issue, and I have been for quite some time now in our country, and and I think we've gotten away from that. People should be respectful about their thoughts and all that, but they should be able to speak freely. But in her particular case, I don't really know the whole scenario, but if free speech, from what I understand from people talking, if that's the reason why, I think it's concerning.
Yeah, I am worried about it myself. I mean, I made a donation to a Republican candidate the other day, and my bank card was shut off.
Really?
I called I was in Fancy's Market. I had just left the beach. So, I mean, I was looking hagged. I was, I had beach hair and sand all over me. And I had $74 worth of grocery to cook dinner. And the woman said, your card's declined. I'm like, holy, it's so embarrassing. You know, I mean, I make enough money. I'm retired state police. I have money in the bank. Thank God. Not as much as I had, 5 years ago. But so they said to me, well, what have you, where have you spent? I'm like, oh, crap. I'm like, okay. So I gave my kid my card to buy Chipotle for him and his friends because they had friends over. I don't know how much that was. And they're like, well, do you know what dollar and cents? I'm like, I don't know. And they're like, did you donate to WinRed? I'm like, oh, yeah, I did. I said, you're shutting my card down because I donated to a Republican candidate? She's like, oh, no, it was this purchase that I made before. I said, but that purchase went through, but my donation didn't go through.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So how do we feel about a bank? This is what I'm scared about. This is why I don't like the cryptocurrency. How do we feel about a bank shutting down a bank card because you donated to WinRed? I don't know if they would have done it if I don't know any Republicans to donate to. I mean, Democrats to donate to. So I don't know, but
Never heard of such a thing.
What could you do as a state senator to kind of rein in
Censorship?
I mean,
well, one of the things we need to do first off the bat is we need to be able to audit the legislature, and we need to have transparency in all the meetings that happen. It's something that I've been advocating for almost a decade now. I was on.
Why do you think that they're so against Diana DeZoglio, the state auditor? And by the way, she, I have to say she is my favorite Democrat.
Probably the only Democrat that.
Well, I don't know. I have Democrat friends that have run for Congress before. I mean, I do have, I
actually worked with her in the House, and I have a great deal. I've always had a great deal of respect for her.
Well, what I respect about her is that she was fired erroneously, or I would say illegally, terminated, and she was subject to a non-disclosure agreement. And I want to, since you're the father of 6 daughters, I would like to get your thoughts on this because I think that this is really important. I don't think people understand what it's like, and I'm going to use a tiny bit of foul language, but my first day as an undercover narcotics officer assigned to the DEA, one of the guys said to me, I don't know if I want to feed you or fuck you. And
contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Thank you, Rick. You're the best. So basically what he said to me was he liked heavy girls, and I was super skinny, platinum blonde, and I don't know if I want to feed you or fuck you. And I was like, oh, you're getting a lunch order? I'll take an Italian, toasted, no hots, don't fuck it up. And that is basically how I survived through that. And I don't know what the instances were, but I know that Diana DeZoglio was sexually harassed. She does not talk about it because retaliation is real. I love the way she's handled it. But Matt, she got up on the floor of the House and said, I'm not pointing fingers. I'm not naming names. And I don't know if you remember this. I don't know if you were there. I'm not naming names because retaliation is real. I will give back the money if someone asks me to. But this non-disclosure and sexual harassment in the State House has got to stop.
I was there when she did that. It was very powerful, and I don't disagree with her at all about the non-disclosure agreements. Look, I think this is they're legal maneuvers, as you know why they're done. But to silence somebody, particularly a woman, for things that have happened to them, and I don't know the story of really what happened.
I don't know it either. She hasn't revealed it.
But I really have concerns about that, and people shouldn't have to lose whatever compensation they got because they signed a non-disclosure agreement and to keep quiet. I don't think that's right, and I really never thought about it before until, to be honest with you, until she actually brought it up on the House floor, and then I related back to my 6 daughters. I'm like, yeah, if that ever happened to them, I'd want them to get compensated and get an apology and all that, but shouldn't have to sign a non-disclosure agreement.
Yeah, so I'm gonna touch probably a little bit of a sore spot, but it's nothing that you don't know about. You made a commercial with some Democrats, Lenatra and forgive me,
Josh
and
Cutler.
what?
Josh Cutler.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So, I feel that the reason why Carrie has gained such traction is because I feel that, and this is just my personal opinion, that people are tired of the BS with candidates being chosen for us. And one of the things that I revealed when I ran for state senate in 2022 was the unwritten rule. And the unwritten rule is when elected Republicans refuse to support Republican candidates against incumbent Democrats. So I want to know, in the greater sense of, government is supposed to protect its citizens. That's the main goal of government. So how do we fight against being bullied into acquiescing to what the Democrats want, with whether it's an omnibus bill or whether it's bullying or whether it's, I'm going to cut off donations to your campaign? Where is there a voice for someone who's in between, a Carrie and a Matt Moratori? How is someone supposed to reconcile it? You can't like every single thing about every single person. And I think one of the things that people are upset about, that I've heard, is that you endorsed the 2 Democrats over 2 Republican candidates. Now, I understand maybe those Republican candidates weren't up to par, but should there be a space in the Republican Party where we say, I don't want to support that Republican because that's not the Republican I am? Or do we, Republicans in Massachusetts are not as devoted as the Democrats are. They vote straight party ticket crazy for crazy people.
Which is the problem. Yeah, but go ahead.
So how will you reconcile those, and by no, like, I think everybody's judged. I think, oh, you're too Republican, you're too conservative, you're too whatever. But I know once you get in that house that if you get somebody who's like squishy, those Democrats are going to move your desk into the hallway and treat you like a broomstick. So how do we satisfy the voters and so they feel like they're being heard?
Yeah. Well, I go back to the very beginning where I said we need to elect more Republicans, period.
But okay, we say that, right?
Can I just finish?
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
As Republicans in Massachusetts, it's easy for us to vote against the Speaker of the House and policies, and we do that all the time. That's easy for us. For Democrats, it's not that easy, because what happens to them is, what you said, they do get punished. A lot of them have, these extra stipends for whether they're chairs or vice chairs or whatever they are. So it's very difficult to vote against the Speaker of the House against anything. But
so you're saying that, let me for clarity,
yeah.
Are you saying that they're financially bullied to get along with the Democrat Party? And
that's it. I mean, they have it. And I've heard other people say that go along to get along. It's in the Democratic circle. It's not with us Republicans. We could vote however we want. Nothing can happen to us. We have Leader Jones, and we have our own caucus.
But then why do some Republicans vote? Do they vote a certain way because they figure, hey, I won't vote against this because it's going to pass anyways? Because that's some of the things that I've heard.
Maybe a little bit, but a lot of it is district too. Some districts are different. Like this district is more purple than, say, down the Webster area, which is very conservative, very red. So you're really voting on how your district wants you to vote, as Republicans at least.
Well, I mean, but wait, like your district didn't tell you to endorse 2 Democrats.
Well, you want me to address that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean,
yeah, if I can. So
what I'm saying is like,
let me just address that. Let me just address that first, because people, and I've said this publicly many times, there was no endorsement involved there. But I'll tell. Let me frame it. What happened? So back in 2022, particularly the fall of 2022, and what people forget is I had an opponent. I always have had an opponent. So we look at our campaign and say, what do we need to do to strategize to win this election? And the one thing we had to do was we had to show the people of Plymouth who vote for me that I do work across the aisle, because in Plymouth, they like when you work together. Now, reason for the commercial was for that. And if you remember back then, the Mass GOP was in somewhat disarray, and there wasn't any support, no financial resources, nothing coming from Mass GOP. So as Republicans, we were on our own. So
No,
unfortunately,
wait, so is that
let me
the
finish.
Jim Lyons?
Let me finish.
Yeah.
So,
Good.
so at that point, we're on our own as Republicans to run. So we need to raise our own money and do all our own things. But this was a strategy, and then not once did we ever say this is an endorsement. And I'm fighting for my life and my election. And unfortunately, sometimes elections are selfish. They're really selfish. And I couldn't go out and support anybody else. I had my own race to run, and I think that's what people forget about that election is that I had my own race, but it never used the word endorsement. I see what people think that it appeared to be, but that's not what it was at all. And I got to tell you, I'm flattered to think that people outside of Plymouth, like Pembroke and these other places, know who Matt Muratori is in October 2022. They didn't. They don't. They didn't know who I was. So that wasn't the point of it whatsoever.
Well, I appreciate you addressing that because
Yeah, sure.
it's I wish sometimes I wish sometimes that I never ran for state senate, and I mean that honestly because I was in the state police for 25 years, and I've seen the underbelly, and that changes you as a person. Not only, I mean, if you see when you see dismembered people in a car crash, you get in your car and you're like, I have 3 kids. I had a Ford Expedition. It was a 2005. It fit 3 full-size car seats along the back. But I thought, my God, I'm putting this kid here and not in the middle. Like, I was freaking out about if I got in a crash. And now, when I talk to candidates, like we had Diane and I, she's not with us. I hope she pops in soon, but we had Robert Antonellis. We had Aaron Packard, who was a write-in candidate, Ian Kane, and John Deaton refused to come on. But the Mass GOP chose the candidate that they wanted to get behind or that they wanted to win. And it just seems like we are losing on the Cape. We lost the district attorney's race. We lost the sheriff. We lost the state rep seat and the DA. I mean, when you lose the DA.
That was all in 2022, and that's exactly what I'm talking about. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep, that's a problem.
But the Mass GOP, she's now I think it's I want to say vice president, but it's vice chair. They supported all those people, and they got beat.
Mm-hmm.
And we've been losing Democrats for the last 12 years. Mm-hmm. And now Charlie Baker is actually throwing his money to Democrats. So when is Charlie Baker, first of all, when is he going to get his foot out of Massachusetts? And when are Republicans, can they ever speak their mind? Or is it a consistent, is everybody lying about everything? Is there a piece of truth in what people say? I've become so skeptical. Yeah. In this sense too, right? And that's why I wanted to have you on it, because people will say, I don't like that kind of Republican or this kind of Republican. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Bob Antonellis ran on Trump. Ian Kane, it seemed to me, was the only one that had any sort of municipal budget business experience and seemed like the correct choice to me. But the Mass GOP chose John Deaton, and I don't want to take away from you and Carrie, but who wrote a book about framing his sister as an attorney. So, is it the leadership that needs to change in Massachusetts, or is it the electorate? What do we need to do to elect more Republicans?
I think the leadership has changed, and that's why I keep going back to October 2022. So since the leadership has changed and the elections happen, as you know, on March 5th, there is more unity on the Mass GOP at this point. And I think
disagree.
You see that, but you see that with Peter Durant won a special election.
All right, I think
Durant,
this
John
is my
Marcy
opinion.
won his seat. So we're starting to see that now, and the Mass GOP has turned it around. They have funds now. They have a good amount of funds now. They'll be able to help candidates like myself win the seat. This is going to be a tough seat to win.
But why would they give you money but not Carrie?
No. They'll give anybody money.
Oh, you mean whoever
wins this race? This is the #1 seat that the Mass GOP sees that we can win back.
All right, let's talk about Dylan Fernandez. Tell me everything you dislike about Dylan Fernandez. And, we leave at 10, so you have to hurry up.
Well, I only have a few more minutes, but
That's okay.
I got to tell you, the policies that he supports, particularly around the migrants, again, we've knocked over 11,000 doors in this district, and we hear it time after time after time. It's the whole migrant issue that's the issue. It revolves around affordability. It arounds affordability for housing. It takes away housing from veterans, from Massachusetts residents. It's all the policies and the things that we're trying to do to adjust or get rid of the right to shelter law that he has supported. And the policies that he's been supporting over the last 8 years are just, I think, just dead wrong. And in reality, I think they're dangerous for this district, what's happening. And that's the difference between either Carrie and myself and Dylan Fernandez. And we're gonna make these issues about affordability, about a balance of power, and about this migrant crisis, the issues. Not national. There's no national issues that we're talking about. We are talking about these issues because these are the issues that the people of this district and the Massachusetts want to talk about and need some resolution on. And putting another Democrat, up in Beacon Hill in the Senate is not the solution to it. The solution is adding more Republicans.
Well, I hope that is the solution. And I don't know if you believe in God, but I pray
I do.
for our country and our state and for you and Carrie.
Thank you.
As we've said, the Red Wine has vowed to support the winning candidate. And unfortunately, Carrie had some, she was helping her daughter move. I'm hoping maybe she'll pop in before that. But Matt, I really appreciate, you are the first, I want to say like other Republican that's agreed to come on with us. And we're not scary, right? We didn't bite anybody.
What I said to people, we're all Republicans. Now, whether, and one of the debates Carrie and I had, one of the questions was, how conservative are you as a Republican? I said, I think I'm about an 8, and she was a 10 plus, and that's okay. But, 90% of the time we agree on so many different things. And Carrie and I in our debates, and when we talk privately, there's so many things we agree on. But what the disagreement is with the Democratic opponent, Dylan Fernandez. And that's the target. That's what we need to get at. We need to get the truth out about him and the policies that he supports.
And so one last question.
Yeah.
And so Carrie has run for this seat before.
Yeah.
Do you feel that, like, are you Jesse Brown won the primary, right, for the seat you vacated?
Yep.
So good for Jesse. Jesse's daughter, actually, and my daughter are really good friends. Her daughter's at my house a lot, so
Great.
I want to give Jesse a little plug.
Yes,
But what I wonder about is, it's still this like, we need to elect more Republicans, yet we have this unwritten rule where some of these Republicans can't get. I think primaries are really hard because you have a short amount of time to raise funds for your primary, and then the general election is so close that it seems like we're bankrupting Republican candidates. I see in your OCPF you've raised like 50,000. I'm sure you have more coming in. It's only for the August race. But should we be spending millions of dollars like this?
No, we should be spending that kind of money on other causes, good causes, like, homeless shelters and, for people that need it, and, food insecurity and things like that. And you hear the money that's being spent on the national races as well. It's crazy. It's just,
how about in Massachusetts, EBT cards being used in Maui? I think it was over like $1 billion being used on vacations. I personally took my kids out of public school and sent them to Catholic school, even though I'm not Catholic, and I haven't been on vacation in 5 years. So if somebody on EBT cards is going to Hawaii, sign me up for that. Again, everybody, Matt Moratori, he vacated his decade-long seat as a state rep for the town of Plymouth, Massachusetts. And he is vying for a vacated state Senate seat. He and Carrie McRae, who is also a Republican. Matt, thank you so much for joining us. We are really grateful.
I appreciate that.
And we hope that win or lose, you will come speak to us after. And
be happy to.
You win, you can't be as honest, but if you don't win, maybe you could let us in on some state house.
What you don't know about me, I am, and again, I have 6 daughters, and I actually, I'm very straightforward, open, honest guy. So that's just who I am. You
Well,
take it or
and
leave
you
it.
know that I am too, because I texted
Yep.
you and we spoke, right?
We spoke,
So-
yeah, we spoke early on. Yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah.
appreciated that.
And
remember that.
and I followed through with everything I said I would do. And
Yeah.
you know, in my heart, I and Carrie too, I think she said as well, like no matter which one of you wins, we really need to have a show of power. And whether you support Trump or you don't support Trump, in my heart, shouldn't we need to think locally.
Yeah.
And we need to bring people together. And if you're willing to do that,
Absolutely. 100%.
okay.
Any Republican candidate, I've always said this publicly, I'm running on a balance of power. I'm running on more Republicans. We need more Republicans, period.
So one other question. So
Yeah.
say you win, will you support down ballot candidates that you feel can win, even if the Mass GOP doesn't agree?
The answer is yes, I would, and I think I really believe after talking to Amy and others in the Mass GOP, they will be supporting every Republican candidate. I really believe they want to do because they believe in the same thing, a balance of power. We need more.
Well, I don't want to get into what Amy Carnevale believes because I don't want to taint your interview.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying. I see what they're trying to do. They are trying to elect more Republicans. We need them.
But
They believe that as well.
except for Trump.
No, I believe the state party is. Matter of fact, I was with Brad Wyatt at a Cohasset event yesterday morning.
Brad Wyatt's a great guy.
Yeah, and he was talking about what the Mass GOP is doing for the Trump campaign. So yeah, no, they're very much involved with that.
Well, all right. Well, thanks for clarifying that. We will follow up. Maybe we'll have Brad Wyatt on. He really is a great guy.
Yeah, exactly. Follow up with Brad.
Hopefully he'll do wonderful things for the Mass GOP. And in 2 more years, we'll be back here again with you or Carrie.
Mhm.
And we really want us to, our objective here is to, give the Heisman to Dylan Fernandez. We don't want him. We don't need another Julian's here.
Correct.
All right, Matt, God bless you. God bless Carrie.
God bless you too. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
We'll catch up with you soon.
All right,
Safe.
you take care. Thanks very
All
much,
right.
guys. Bye.
So, Dix.
It was interesting. He had some good points that he brought up. It's good to know that he will support anybody on the Republican ballot side of things that actually wins. So if he loses, he's willing to support his opponents.
Well, we actually talked back in December when we found out that Matt was, quote, asked to run against Karen McRae. And, I had called and had a conversation with Amy Carnevale, and I asked her straight out, I said, did you or did the party ask Matt Moratori to run against Karen McRae? And if so, did you inform Carrie McRae of that? Because look what Carrie has done, and look what she has overcome. She is 39 votes away from tying Matt Moratori, and Matt is a 10-year incumbent, a state rep in Plymouth. He does have 6 daughters, and in full disclosure, when Matt and I spoke, he was very gentlemanly. He was very open to having a discussion with me. He didn't hang up on me. I texted him first, I think, and he called me back. I think I contacted his office maybe to speak with him. And so I think he thought I was a constituent until he started to ask questions and I started to answer. But I basically asked him, I said, you have 6 daughters, and I'm just curious why you would usurp Carrie instead of supporting, Carrie, females, when you have 6 daughters. And listen, I'm not trying to slam that at all. This was the conversation that we had. But how would you feel if someone took credit for your daughter's work? Like, say she was doing a PhD and she wrote a thesis, and then all of a sudden somebody stole it and put their name on it, And I'm not saying that he stole anything. I'm bad with analogies. But Dixie, what I wanted to say is, like, it's a team, and you in the military, and you understand teamwork.
Yeah.
I disagree with the fact that the Republican Party in Massachusetts is unified. I disagree with that greatly.
I entirely disagree with that.
Yeah, and that worries me, because no matter what side you're on, you know if you're going to coalesce with another group or not. I mean, there was a state committee meeting recently, and the leadership of the Mass GOP had not explained Robert's rules to the new state committee members. So they didn't understand that those meetings were governed by Robert's rules. And I hope that Diane pops on in soon, because she is the expert on Robert's rules. And it's basically how government meetings are run. I don't know if it's used in any nonprofits or whatever, but it's a way to keep decorum, so that people get a voice and they get to talk, and which is good, because when you have highly contentious debate, as we do in politics, you need to have some kind of, you need to start talking. You have 2 minutes, like there's going to be some. Out of that, it turns into a mudslinging, mud wrestling match, and we don't want that.
Well, some people might want that, but
Well, I don't know if anybody wants that. But there are definitely different factions, and there are factions of the Republican Party, and this is what I was trying to get to. I feel that this isn't to take away from Bob Antonellis or Aaron Packard. I think they were a little bit over their toes as far as experience and answering questions, and just basically being knowledgeable about how government works. I remember asking one of the candidates, Aaron or Bob Antonellis, and they said, well, that wasn't on his sheet and he needed to look it up.
right.
But, it was a question. I can't remember the question, but it was something that I thought that they should have known. And me personally, I thought Ian Kane was a good candidate. And did I care that he was once a Democrat for a cup of coffee? No. But our Republican Party seems to think if you don't support Trump, you're trash. So that's not inclusive, because why can't we have different ideas, but our main goal, our main umbrella, we run under the auspices of conservatism. And what is it? What is conservatism? Like, why are you a conservative? I mean, obviously you're a retired military member.
If we speak in terms of today's world and what's going on, I don't like what has been done over the past 3.5 years, for one, definitely. I don't want my children and my grandchildren to have to be in this world and fight for every single thing, while we just have a money tree, it seems, to print out money day after day after day after day, so that we're in debt in the billions, millions, thousands, however you want to put it, and nobody agrees with anybody, and everybody blames everybody else.
Well, people don't, like they say, what bothered me is, okay, I'm using Ian Kane as an example, right?
He was very well spoken, because I heard the interview.
Right, and I met him through Judy Crocker.
Yeah.
At the, I think you were
I
in
was
town
there. Yeah.
at the Barnstable Republican Town Committee. So thank you, Judy Crocker, for introducing us to Ian Kane. But he received no help from the Mass GOP.
None.
And, they labeled him from the very beginning, and they sort of wrote his narrative before he had a chance to even express it. I mean, he is a city councilor in Quincy.
For 10 years, right?
Right, 10 years. And I think he's been reelected 5 times.
Yep.
So when I was the station commander of South Boston, I worked frequently, because the city of Quincy was in my jurisdictions, Quincy, South Boston.
God bless you.
I forget the whole area. It's been a long time. But those people are extremely involved in their politics. I mean, South Boston people, I think some of them would like to put a barricade around the city and only let you come in and out because they would complain, oh, people are speeding on Day Boulevard. So as a station commander, I would set up a speed trap on Day Boulevard. And all the people that caught were from Southie. And they're like, hey, but I'm from here. No, you were the one doing the complaining. But I guess what I'm saying is those people, I think because they live in such, I don't know if it's because they live in such close quarters, they have more of a sense of community than the suburbs do.
That is true.
because like your cousin and your uncle, like the whole family lives in Southie, 2 streets over. Your ex-boyfriend from elementary school, you know what I mean, is now
That's the
fixing
same
your
with
car.
your family, with when we went to a wedding
Oh my God, yes.
and everybody knew who your cousin was and who your auntie was. And we weren't even like anywhere near where their house was. We were blocks away.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh yeah, she gets this. So that was, I
Yeah,
mean, that's a whole
everybody
different thing.
knows everything about everybody, and they're very involved in their politics. And I had an opportunity as a station commander of South Boston to attend these community meetings with my commander, who at the time was Ricky Ball. And we went to these Boston City Council meetings. It was like, I think Michelle Wu, Ayanna Presley, I think they were the Boston City Council members, Michael Flaherty at the same, in Boston. I forget who else was there. But very, very involved. And you don't, I guess my point is like, you don't get reelected in Quincy 5 times in a row if you're doing a terrible job.
Correct.
And someone said, oh, well, he complimented Michelle Wu. Okay, well, we just spoke to Matt Moratori, who said sometimes you have to, I mean, he didn't say this, but sometimes you have to kiss a little ass to get shit done.
Yeah. You get
And that's
more
what Ian
with
says. He's
honey than
gotten
vinegar.
shit done. What I don't like about it is Ian Kane come out and said, one of the things I don't agree with, I'm not going to vote.
Right.
Well, if you're not going to vote, then I think we should have petition to have I'm not happy with either candidate
Right.
button
Yeah.
to send a message that we are not happy with either candidate.
Correct.
And we've also seen that John Deaton, because, being ex-military, both of us, but you were active duty, we saw the Mass GOP throw money behind John Deaton. And I think it's despicable
It's disgusting.
that they would back such a candidate.
John Deaton admittedly self-admits that he's a criminal. Even while he was an attorney for the United States Marine Corps, he was a JAG officer, I believe, had his sister falsely accused of stabbing him.
Well, no, he falsely accused her.
Right.
And-
That's what I meant to say. Sorry.
Yeah, he falsely accused her. And I'm trying to find an excerpt
And-
from the book.
She actually ended up spending 6 weeks, I believe, in jail, like actual jail, for something that she never did.
Which is absolutely abhorrent. He says, this is John Deaton, page 47. I flew home that weekend, only telling my brother Todd what happened next would cause Tina, his sister, and I not to speak for several years. I arrived at my mother's house at 1 a.m. Tina was asleep on the couch, coming down for a heroin binge. I walked into my mother's bedroom and told her that no matter what she may hear, don't come out of the bedroom until I say so. I told the same to my sister Michelle. My brother Todd had picked me up at the airport and was in the kitchen. I grabbed a steak knife from the drawer and told Todd, do not open the door, do not peek through. There can be no witnesses. Now I want to reiterate, this guy's an attorney for the
Yep.
Judge Advocate General in the Marine Corps. Todd's face became pale. John, what the fuck are you doing? What needs to be done, brother? No matter what, do not open the door. I closed the door to the living room. I grabbed a chair and the wireless phone, and then I sat down in front of the couch and placed the knife on my knee. I shook Tina to wake her. It took several minutes to shake her fog. When she awoke, she was startled. What are you going to do, John? What are you doing, John? I stared at her with a blank look in my face. She noticed the knife and the phone and yelled out, what the fuck are you doing? She yelled for my mom. Mommy, mommy. Tina started to get off the couch and I violently pushed her down. Tina, if you get up again, I'll put you through the fucking wall.
Well, that's nice.
Yeah. I looked her dead in the eye now. You rob your own mother at gunpoint with a loaded fucking gun and threaten her life. My fucking mother. By the way, his mother's had 10 kids with 6 different guys.
At least.
Tina began to cry. What are you going to do with that knife, John? I shook my head and told her, I love you, Tina. And then I took the knife and sliced my left forearm open in 3 places. Blood
Idiot.
splattered everywhere, including all over Tina's face, and she screamed in sheer horror. I dialed 911. My sister's high, and she's attacked me with a knife. I told them to send the police and paramedics.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong, you had a career in law enforcement, right?
Mm-hmm.
And in your opinion, professional opinion, if someone were that much of a danger to themselves and or to others, isn't there a mechanism to go to court?
Yeah,
And
I don't
actually-
know what it is in that state, but it's a Section 35. And
Right.
and you've helped me with this because you have experience. We never found any address where John or his family member lived in Highland Park.
We did.
They lived in Hazel Park, and his sister currently has outstanding bills
Mhm.
and outstanding liens to the amount of $6,000 or $8,000. So why isn't John the gazillionaire asbestos attorney,
Right.
if he quote loves his sister like he says he does?
Why isn't he helping her now?
Why doesn't he pay those bills for her?
Right.
And then this is what made me so upset about the Mass GOP is think about how many police officers are in the state of Massachusetts. I mean, there's at least 2,300 state troopers alone. That's a lot of votes.
Yeah.
And then you take every single town in the state of Massachusetts
Yeah.
and figure out how many police officers are there. Wouldn't you try to court that vote?
I would think.
So John Deaton in 2017 attended with his girlfriend, her son's, so his girlfriend's son's football game,
Okay.
or a football game that the whole family was at. John Deaton ended up allegedly grabbing the throat of his girlfriend's ex-husband at this football game. All right. And if you read the lawsuit, it's pathetic because even, any attorney, if you have a class of 400, the guy or girl who graduated 400 is still an attorney. Okay. So don't think that they're always smarter than you. They may know where to find answers, but so John Deaton in his infinite wisdom decides to sue Barrington, Rhode Island Police Department. And get this, for loss of reputation. Now, here's a guy who just wrote a book.
Seriously?
And you know what's encapsulated in this book? I mean, it's sheer criminality.
It absolutely.
And I'm wondering,
he admits to it all. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
He admits to it all. So how has this person come this far in his career, be it personal or professional, that the GOP is supporting this person for office when in his own memoir, which we just must assume that it's true, he goes through everything that he's done, and he admits that he was selling drugs. He admits that.
Oh, and he says he was selling drugs to get his mother food stamps. That's not how it works.
No.
I was raised by a single mother on food stamps and lived in the city. You get food stamps when you're freaking poor. You don't sell drugs to get food stamps. When I was undercover narcotics, I tried to buy drugs with the food stamps.
Yeah, maybe that's what he means, is that the people had food stamps and he was trying to take the food stamps to give to his mother, but he was selling drugs.
I don't know. I don't
know. He claimed that there was a drive-by and one of his friends got shot. So he took his friend's gun and proceeded to shoot through the back window of the vehicle that
How many
was there.
people are going to allow you to take their gun? And if you shot the back window, that's going to happen in a split second. Okay,
Correct.
because if you're driving away from a scene,
Mhm.
You're driving fast,
Right.
and so he had the wherewithal to say to his friend, like, "Dude, give me your gun. Someone better shot than you." And he shot out the back window and doesn't know if he killed
He
anybody.
doesn't know if he killed anybody because he doesn't know if the person leaned over to duck the bullet at the speed of light, like Superman or Batman or somebody.
This makes me really scared that this is
it's-
who the GOP picked.
Yeah, it's insane. But I digress. According to, I just want to read you guys a couple little things from his own memoir, like I said. And he says, although I lied to the cops, I wasn't under oath, and I would never testify against my sister for something she didn't do. My brother Todd, however, didn't follow my instructions. Unknowns to me, he cracked the kitchen door and watched it all happen. I'm flabbergasted by even reading this and thinking
His
that
brother was in the Air Force,
that's even worse. I don't have any words to say how this affects me, like mentally and whatnot, because myself, and I know there's other people as well, my age and much younger, because it's going to be their world. I don't understand how this is what we've come to, that this is what we accept in the Republican Party, or even any party.
Anywhere,
really.
anywhere,
How do
especially
you
like,
accept that? And there's never any accountability. Why? Why is there never accountability?
because I think people don't know and they don't do backgrounds. And that's why, Diane and I are committed to giving people information,
Right.
and they can do with it what they want. There's a state Senate election every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So if the candidate that you like, whatever, doesn't get in this year, then you have 2 years. I don't agree. I think it's too short a term because you're always raising money.
Because you're just learning about that position too.
Yeah,
in
and you're
2
just
years.
you're campaigning all the time, and one of the things I hated about campaigning was asking for money, and you have to get really comfortable with asking for money. And when you have grown up and earned everything that you have and nothing was ever given to you, it's really hard to ask for money. But you're not a politician if you're not asking for money. So what I said to Matt was, I wish I didn't know what I know.
Right.
But when I know people that are running, I just hope that they don't get corrupted.
Right.
I don't think like Sweezy won his primary, and he said, I'm looking forward to a very long political career. I don't think you should be.
No, it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be determined that like once you're elected, like that's it.
Well,
Like-
because that's where all the donors, they give all their money to incumbents, no matter who they are. These
Right.
corporations don't care, Democrat or Republican or whatever. But did you have more to read? I didn't
I
wanna
did.
take away from the.
No, there's just so much that goes on with this person, John Deaton. But I do want to touch base again and add a little more to that was read in his memoir. He says, plus, I was a federal prosecutor, and the only other witness was a drug addict with multiple felonies under her belt.
Now, let me just interrupt that. That is extremely significant to me, because if you compare that statement with the 2017 police report of John Deaton being arrested in Barrington, Rhode Island, who is suing because his, quote, reputation was damaged.
Right.
He alleges in that same arrest in 2017 that the guy that he likely touched the throat and neck area of, because how many people have you ever touched the throat and neck area? I mean,
yeah.
that's a very protected area.
Yeah, it's a very
neck and
personal
throat
area.
I mean, if
Yep.
someone comes and pokes you or grabs you by the neck and throat area, I'm sorry, they are a predator.
Yes.
And his excuse for that was, I may have likely touched. So that's a non-lie,
Right.
For a lawyer.
Yeah.
I may have likely touched his throat and neck area.
A lie by omission.
Well, when you're pushing someone, do you ever really touch their neck and throat area likely? No, you push them on the chest or you grab their arms. First of all, why are you putting your hands on someone at a football
Right.
game? Tell the guy to fuck off and be gone.
Right.
And say, I'll deal with you later. But no, he took it one step further and said, well, this guy has a warrant, so he's a scumbag. So anybody who's,
How did
quote,
he even know that he had a warrant?
well, he is an attorney, so I'm sure he has access to.
So do we think that he abused his
I don't
privilege?
I don't know that. So I don't want to speculate on that, but the only way that he could know that there's a warrant would be to use his attorney access in Massachusetts to determine that there was actually a warrant. So,
Right.
That's something for the Massachusetts Board of Bar Overseers to look into, because this was a Rhode Island case, so I'm
Yep.
sure that they don't know. But, and we don't know what other admissions John Deaton has made, but 2 admissions, an admission that he said no one's going to believe the drug addict's sister, so he stabbed himself. And then the admission that, well, this guy has a warrant, so that should somehow lessen his
Justify.
credibility because John's an attorney and this other guy has a warrant. But I'm sorry, go ahead and.
So he goes on to say that as a federal prosecutor living in Arizona, I knew that the state of Michigan would not subpoena me to testify. I knew without my testimony, the state of Michigan would have to eventually drop the charges. He goes on to say, although I lied to the cops, I wasn't under oath. He continues like this.
Like, does that make it any better? Because if you're lying to a police officer, you're filing a false report. And that is a crime. That's a crime. So he admits, he even says, like, basically, I knew I was lying, but because I wasn't under oath, it doesn't matter. Well, what else have you lied about, John? If
Right.
you're not under oath. So are you saying that the only time you need to be truthful is when you're under oath?
So you just can hop, skip along your daily activities and just lie to everybody because you're not under oath. How does that work?
Well, I mean, he's got all kinds of money. He walked into Massachusetts and handed Amy Carnevale and her minions money, which I'm sure they all accepted. I'm sure they all passed out stickers. And John Deaton's a great guy for the
Clearly.
fact that he framed somebody for a crime that they didn't commit and they went to prison and lost their
I think
freedom.
I think I've gotten like 5 mailings from his campaign, even though I'm not in his area for him seeking office, but he has money to waste, and that's what the GOP is counting on. Like, they just took his money. They didn't care anything about what he represents, what he's done.
Not only that,
there's no vetting. There was nothing.
They didn't care enough to present the voters with a respectable candidate. Howie declared him, quote, the winner. And this goes back to, what I was saying about the Republican Party is, so you're not going to give Ian Kane a look because he said that he wasn't going to support Trump, which is everybody's prerogative. But instead, you're going to support a candidate that isn't qualified or isn't ready. And that doesn't mean that they won't be ready another time.
Right.
But
At the moment.
They are not ready. So instead of the Mass GOP looking at all candidates neutrally, they chose Deaton because he has money. And that's what this is about. And that's why when I was, thinking about running for Senate, I was told I had to raise $600,000.
That's insane.
Well, I mean, whether it is or it isn't, what it means is you need to pay me. And that's how these political operatives work. And it appears that they're paid to lose campaigns.
Is it just me maybe that thinks that when I go to vote, I feel like I'm voting for what I believe is going to be the best policy for.
But here's the thing. We don't know what these people's policies are.
We don't.
Because they're so, for example, I'll take when I ran. I had a platform that I ran on, and then my opponent stole my platform.
That sounds like Trump.
It's right. And it's just like Kamala. So Kamala's now saying we need to close the border.
No tax on tips.
No tax on tips and whatever. So to try to make themselves more like the other person, which that person could never be.
Right.
That man could never walk in my shoes.
Correct.
But this is the person we're going to put Deaton, and people are falling in line. And I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but like the Hingham Republicans, someone said to me, like, do you really think he's worse than Elizabeth Warren? Is that our goal?
To be
Are they worse than Elizabeth Warren?
Wow. Wow.
How about they're the worst of all the candidates? He's the worst of all the Republican candidates in aggregate.
Absolutely.
Because he lies,
criminal.
he cheats, he steals, he's admitted to criminality. He is admitting to defacing and military property, which is his body.
Which is his self, yeah.
I mean, what would happen if you were active duty
Oh my God.
and you started cutting yourself? I mean, you would be sectioned.
Absolutely, in about 5 seconds. Even people with eating disorders and what some I think are like the smallest of issues when you're in the military are under the spotlight and they're dealt with immediately. So when you have someone like John Deaton, who had the privilege of being a United States.
And it is a privilege.
It is. It's
A
absolutely
Marine
a privilege.
Corps prosecutor.
Marine Corps JAG. Yep.
And what I don't understand, and I haven't been able to verify this yet and probably won't by the election, but So he allegedly put himself through private high school at age 14 or 15. Okay. He went to college, had testicular cancer. And listen, I have friends who've had cancer. They are not going to college.
No,
And
no,
there's no way. Okay.
Nope. Not at the moment.
And then he went on to have children.
Yep.
So, in my limited perspective of people that I know with testicular cancer, they had to save their sperm
Correct.
because when you have radiation treatments and
Yeah,
cancer treatments,
they're
it kills
dead.
your sperm count. So, again, I don't want to take anything away from him if he is a cancer survivor, but it's just everything he says is so hyperbolic. And people are like, yay, he was the underdog. And I'm like, no. He's not the
No,
underdog.
he was not ever.
He's the scary dog.
He is very scary
He's
because
the lurk in the shadows, kind of controlled state operatives that we want to stay away from.
Yeah.
When you admit to criminality as an attorney, how does that play with the Supreme Court of Rhode Island or Massachusetts?
The zero accountability that we see now in our government, and then you look at him as a candidate and see clearly he has zero accountability, and it makes you wonder why the RNC is actually supporting him, because I don't understand it. And maybe I'm naive, but I just don't get it.
Well, in my opinion, it's because he had money.
That's the only reason.
But are we to judge someone only by the money that they come with? Is that not, lack of diversity? And I hate to use that word, but, do we want someone with criminality, a known criminal, to be in office? I don't think so. And I think
don't.
that people that support that, or who don't question that, or, I think it's really healthy to question people about things. And we've questioned Chris Lazon, who's
Yep.
a state Senate candidate. We'll question his self-submission that he made $20,000 to $40,000 working for his parents.
Right.
I mean, and we
And
did
providing for his, how many kids did he have? 4, 5, 6?
a 4, I believe. It doesn't really matter, but 2 are
No.
his wife's from a previous marriage,
Okay.
and they have 2 children together. And God bless them, and God bless him for
Yep.
taking care of those kids if he does. But you can't survive on the Cape
No.
for $40,000 a year.
No.
So I questioned that, and I questioned that because of the same things I said to Matt Moratori. Is, do we just accept any Republican?
No. Well, I know I don't just accept
Well, I
any
mean,
Republican, but I don't think what I've seen is people are saying, I'm not gonna vote for or on any side of Republicanism, for lack of a better phrase, but just because they don't like Trump. You're not voting because you like or dislike the person. You should be voting on what you believe in and what you think that they believe in at that point in time.
But even when I asked the candidates, like, what policy do you like or disagree with,
They couldn't answer.
the supporters or the detractors, like,
Right.
no one could answer that.
Nope.
And that's where we get into this like kind of low information. And Newt Gingrich wrote this book that I read probably 5 years ago or so, and it's called The Dumbest Generation. And
Well, that's encouraging.
Newt Gingrich, say it like it is, but there has been kind of a dumbing down of, look at when we text. We text like R, letter R, you, awake, question mark. I mean,
That's so funny because I find myself doing that all the time, just for my kids, and trying to make things quick and abbreviated. But then when I have to send like a professional email, and I find myself typing R, U, like, or like
how about when you
WTF?
dictate something and it comes out wrong on your
Oh,
voice
yeah.
activated phone? I think I sent one of those to a boss that I had in the state police, and thank God he was
Understanding.
understanding. But it's funny because he had sent me something the week before, and at that point, I don't know what was going on with the Apple phones, but if you hit a certain button, it would like scroll like "love you," like some weird shit, right? And he sent me that,
Oh no.
and I was like, oh shit, and I was upset because he knew that I filed a lawsuit against my boss.
Yeah.
But my boss talked about his flaccid or erect penis and who he put it in and his whole sexual escapades, right? So, I mean, who would lie about that? I mean, 10
No,
years
there
later,
is no
we're
way
going
that-
to trial in December. But I felt bad for him because he was such a good guy. I knew exactly what happened to him because it had happened to me before. And I was like, no problem, you're good. It's all good. You know,
Yeah.
it's no worries. So, so I don't know how we get, you know, this Trump has been great and he's been divisive at the same time,
Agreed.
because there really is a thing called Trump derangement syndrome.
Yeah.
It really is true. And you can support the policies without supporting the person.
Correct.
And, you know, and I think, you know, going back to like Ian Kane, everything he said in our interview really supported the mainstream conservative ideology. And the other two candidates were just like, yeah, I'm an American first candidate, but didn't explain what that was.
No, they had
Now,
no idea
I'm not
what that
taking
was.
anything away from them because, listen, I didn't know anything about anything when I ran. I you know, I thought I knew, and I depended on fellow police officers who, you know, Exaros and Whalen both really kind of worked against me.
Yeah.
For whatever reason that was. And they found a like, quote, yes candidate. And that is why we need to question candidates. It's not to embarrass them. It's not to, but you asked to be put on the spot.
Correct.
You know, like I ran because I don't have anything to hide. You know, I've never cheated on my husband. I have 3 kids. I didn't get married till I was 36. I was a police officer. I never put my finger on the scale. The only thing I ever had was, you know, a lawsuit for sexual harassment. But what people see is a flash and a smile and nothing else. And they
Right.
go with that.
It's so hard to, I think, and it's my opinion, and maybe your
Well, of course, I mean, it's all our
Opinion too.
opinion, yeah.
but it's so hard to know who you can trust and when and what the circumstances
Well, you
are.
just look into their background.
Correct, but I think that now, at least from what I've seen recently, is there really is no looking into backgrounds, and if there is, it's turning a blind eye to what the background actually tells them.
Yeah.
So they're seeing the truth, they're reading the truth, they're witnessing the truth, but they still refuse to believe it.
Well, it's
And
not
they
only
just-
that, it's like the elected Republicans that I dealt with. I remember one female specifically told me, the voters don't care if that person got a free house or a job from their family. They don't care if they failed everywhere else. And you know what? She was right. Because they never asked about it. They never investigated it. They don't look into family dealings. So really, it's all a mirage. It's like smoke and mirrors, like the state police. You know, we only care about our image, and not the substance. We want people that we can control. And I don't think that's what we want in Massachusetts. Like, I hope that we court unions, because when you think of all the unions that are donating to Democrats, they have hard lines donated to Democrats.
Yep.
But if you could rally all the police vote, all the fire vote, all the nurses who see the death and destruction and harm. I mean, when one person gets killed by an illegal alien or a drunk driver or whatever, the whole family and community suffers. Yet we keep allowing these people in, we keep giving them housing.
How about the schools? The schools now are dealing with all of that.
It is so sad. And
I I saw something recently that said that a lot of these schools were blindsided by the immigrant or not immigrant, illegal persons that have entered our country. And they've been placed in shelters. They've been given free housing and food and everything else. They have children. And it is not their children's fault that they're put in this position. But now the schools are put in a position where they didn't know that they were getting all of these extra students every year. So they don't have the funds to support it. And then you have, at least in Massachusetts, you have the Healy administration announcing a $2 million increase in their federal budgeting for these illegal immigrants.
Well, I want to say that we, in our, I believe it's our Massachusetts Constitution, I could be wrong, but we do have an obligation to educate people. And I understand that, like, you don't want people coming to this country and not be educated. But when that was written, the rules were different. I mean, you were sponsored to come into this country, or you stayed with a family and you learned English, and you acclimated to, that's not the right word, acclimated, you became part of the culture. I don't know the word I'm looking for.
No, I get you.
But now you have the second generation that still doesn't speak English. And I personally, I spent a summer in Germany. I couldn't imagine living there anymore if I didn't speak the language.
Correct.
I mean, first of all, your thumb is one, which I totally didn't know, and your index finger is two. So I would go to a bakery every morning and I would put up like a single finger, and I would point to what I wanted, and they always gave me two. And I thought they just liked me until, it was a boyfriend at the time that I was visiting, until he told me that this is, their thumb is one and your index finger is two. And then I knew that they just thought I was stupid. And I was like, I had all these
I hope
cabinets.
it was good.
It was really good, but you can only eat so many German pastries.
Yeah.
So as far as unity goes, it's really hard to unify people who have negative feelings and negative actions towards another person or group.
Yep.
And those are the fractions that I see in Massachusetts. It's, it's the Trump supporters, the never Trumpers, and the middle that's kind of like, well, I don't like either one. Well, in some sense, I believe you have a duty to choose. Like for president, I believe you should vote. So
Yep.
I kind of disagree with the congressional candidates that said that they wouldn't vote either way. But at the same time, there's been times where I didn't want to vote for a Republican because I knew what they were.
Right.
So do we just do like the Democrats do and vote straight down the party line, no matter the person, like no matter how grotesque their actions may have been?
There's just so much at stake that I think, and you can say the same thing, like you have kids that are younger. My kids are a little bit older than yours. And right now, I know a lot of the kids that are like, I call them kids, but they're not really kids. Like
I know what you mean.
20-somethings. They don't even feel secure enough, even though they have great jobs with unions and chances for advancement and all of those things. They don't even feel secure enough that they can buy a house in this country, never mind in this state. The 20-somethings that I know don't want to be in the state anymore. And that's sad to me.
Yeah.
That is very sad.
Because
to
what's
me.
going to be left?
Right. And I grew up in the city
So did I.
100 years ago.
Where did you grow up in the city?
Fall River.
Oh, no kidding. All right, I was in East Boston. Fall River.
Fall River. The river.
Well, that's a different city than East Boston.
It
We-
is.
We never interacted with anybody from Fall River. I didn't
Yeah,
even know
well-
where Fall River was.
No, I left there and I swore that I would never go back. The only reason I did go back here and there was because my grandparents still live there and they basically brought me up. So I would spend time with them. But beyond that, I never wanted to go back. So I can't even imagine now, like when my own children say, There's nothing to do on the Cape. I hate the state. I hate this. I hate that.
Well, there's never really been anything to do on the Cape for
Right.
kids, so
But then-
I get that part.
I do too. But then when we happen to have been on the road, whether it was looking at colleges or whatnot, and we would drive through some different cities, and I'm like, so do you want to live in the city? And so they could see what there actually was, at least on the visual side of things, not knowing
Right.
the intricacies of it. But they don't
I could
wanna-
never go back to the city, could you?
No, never.
I don't think I could.
Never.
Even if I had a penthouse on the water overlooking with a
No.
butler, I get irritated driving to the airport. I grew up in a triple decker with a single mother.
Right.
And I couldn't imagine, trying to shovel a parking spot and put my chair in it.
No, I know. And you see that, like, even driving down from the Cape to New Bedford and whatnot, you drive down some of these streets and there's like all these chairs along the
Yeah.
street, or like trash cans or something. And when you ask, like, what the heck, they're like, well, that's to save their space. So when the plows come, they don't plow them in.
Oh, not only that, but people will fight you for a parking
Well,
spot.
yeah. And I'm like, knowing me, I'm like, that'd be the day. I'm like, he put a chair in my spot. Like, that thing is
The
going
funniest
down the
thing
road.
I ever heard was, how St. Patrick's Day, they have the St. Patrick's Day, whatever it's called, like
Yeah.
no,
Parade.
the breakfast.
Okay. Yep.
And Congressman Stephen Lynch was telling a story, and I used to stay at a friend's place. Sue, thank you for letting me stay at your place in Southie when I was the station commander of South Boston. And it was great because she had a parking spot. Nobody else has a parking spot. So Congressman Lynch, at one of these Patriots Day celebration breakfasts, whatever, they all get up and they kind of roast each other. So he said, I was down there shoveling my spot, and my wife yelled out the third story of the triple decker that they lived on, which was just up the street from where I was,
Yeah.
and which was like G and 7th, I think, but it was at the top of G and 7th. So he says his wife yells down, "Stephen, you're in Congress now. What are you doing with that ugly lawn furniture? Put out the good teak furniture." So, how are you judged? Like, and and of course it's a
Yep.
joke, right? But where's our judgment now? Where's our morality? Where's our ethics? Like, I understand it's politics, okay? But at what point are you? I mean, look at Ed Kennedy got elected, okay? I'm sure he went to his grave sad about what he did, hopefully, but he persevered or whatever. But the Mass GOP putting forth someone who is an admitted criminal and broke the law as an attorney, I'm sorry, like, that breaks my heart, and that's kind of where I draw the line, and that's where I think that we get into, I don't know, Rick, what you would call it, communism or dictatorship, or we're actually putting forth criminals.
How do we get to that point?
People are retarded. That's how we got to that point.
Yeah, what is it, Rick? I mean, like, we would tell the truth on our Facebook page, Double D Uncensored, Diane and I, and people would get mad. I'm like, it's a fact, and I posted the fact. Like, why are you mad about the fact?
Because people don't care about facts anymore. That started changing, I would say, probably 8 or 9 years ago, when people started adding the word "my" to the word "truth," because all that did was up jump an opinion to a validated fact, even though it was nothing but emotion. So now your truth is what takes precedence. So when you start trying to tell people actual truth, well, I don't like that because it hurts my feelings. I mean,
Yeah,
I go
because it
through
hurts my feelings.
I go through it all the time. I'm like, and this is something, because I know people that are just diametrically opposed to Trump. And I know some people that are diametrically opposed to Trump because they don't like his handling of COVID, and they had family members that got sick, family members that got passed away. I'm not going to downplay any of that or tell them how they should vote, etc. But I will say, for all the people that are like, I just can't vote for him because he's mean. If we can't come together to agree to get rid of the commies in this country, then we don't deserve to have a country anymore.
Well, our founding fathers said, enjoy your freedom while you have it.
No, I mean Ben Franklin said something very similar that, as he was leaving the constitutional signing, and someone asked him, "What have you given us today, sir?" "A republic, madam, if you can keep it."
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And,
I mean, our
you know,
founding fathers, if you look at if you look at their writings and their papers, they honestly expected this experiment to last maybe 50, 75 years tops. And unfortunately, they weren't very far off,
right.
because it was fundamentally changed after the Civil War, and it hasn't been the same since.
Well, I've been reading the Federalist Papers. I don't know if you've read any of them.
All
Uh,
of
yeah, and I got the big print because then I can sit in my sauna without my glasses and read the big print without sweating all over my glasses. And I find it amazing that people who didn't have, you know, the and you know, shame on me for judging someone's intellect on their surroundings, but I mean, they didn't have toilets, and they were so astute, and they thought of all the different ways that we could possibly lose our freedom, and tried their best to ameliorate those with, you know, how they set up the government. But they also had the foresight to know that there would be corruption.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. They always knew that there was a chance that things could go sideways. That's why the Second Amendment was created in the first place.
And
That's
people
why
don't understand that. They want to argue about whether they're a militia or not. No, it's to protect yourself from an encroaching government.
Well, that's because nobody understands that when the Second Amendment was written, well-regulated simply meant in proper working order.
Right.
So everybody likes to think about regulations the day we view them today, and they're like, "Well, it says right there you have to be part of a well-regulated militia to be able to own weapons."
Well, that's how they defined it then.
In colonial times, anybody that was male, of sound mind, of sound body, and above the age of 16 was already a part of a militia if they owned a weapon. It was pretty much just that simple. I actually don't even think it was 16. I think, if memory serves, I think the age was 13 to 14. But that meant everybody that was of a township that was an able-bodied, of sound mind, had access to a weapon, and was old enough, was automatically a member of the militia, because we didn't have an organized military. So one of the things that started changing when we got an organized military was this idea that, well, now that we have an organized military, we don't need a militia. And no, I'm sorry, you're wrong. Because one, I still believe that everybody of a certain age that is of sound mind and sound body who has access to a weapon should be able to use that weapon to not only defend themselves, their family, their neighbors, their friends, but defend themselves from Joe Biden, or even in this case, Kamala Harris, because I'm sorry, if you think we need an F-15 to beat the government, the Taliban is laughing at you.
Right? So have you ever read Thomas Paine's Common Sense?
Yes. It was
I
actually
think-
required reading for a group that I used to be part of.
I think it's such a great document because he talks about society and how it's produced by our wants and government by our wickedness. And in that society promotes our happiness, where government negatively restrains our vices, or, you know, whatever negative thing you are. And the one encourages social intercourse and the other creates distinctions. But the government ends up being a punisher. And, you know, in one of his writings, he says, society in every state is a blessing, but government, even in its best state, is but a necessary evil, and in its worst state, an intolerable one. For when we suffer or are exposed to the same miseries by a government, which we might expect in a country without a government, our calamity is heightened by reflecting that we furnish the means by which we suffer. So right now we're suffering from an influx of illegals, which is one of the reasons why, you know, we've tried to form this new government, is because we don't want interlopers interfering in our society and in our elections. And, you know, who is to be held responsible for that?
Well, I mean, you can simplify it just a little bit more. I mean, you're on the right track, but the main reason why we founded the government that we founded and went to war with England is because we decided we were tired of people thousands of miles away from us telling us how we could live our lives, which is pretty much the same thing that we're facing now. I mean, we have now a centralized government, which is much bigger than the founding fathers ever intended, that has more control than the founding fathers ever intended. And they've centralized everything to the point where when the Constitution was written, we had what was called a general government, and it basically existed for three common purposes. Now they control almost everything. So our issues and our complaints and our gripes and the things that are making us more and more angry every day are we now have two halves of the same coin within the same continent. And we have half the country that just says we want to be left alone. And we have the other half of the country saying, please, government, please be our mommy and our daddy. And we don't want that. And that is why I have, as much as I have fought the idea, as hard as I have fought against the idea, I firmly believe we are headed towards a national divorce. It's either
And
going
what do you mean by that? Like, you don't mean a national, like a civil war, but you mean a divorce. So explain that, because divorce is such a painful word.
The issue is the national divorce could happen one of two ways. We can either agree that we can no longer cohabitate or cooperate with these people, and basically we start divvying up things and they get some and we get some.
Ooh, that's
That
divorce.
sounds scary.
Yeah,
That's divorce.
that's national divorce.
Scary.
That's national divorce. Or at some point, we probably will have some form of a civil war again, because we now have two completely antithetical ideologies in the same place at the same time, and those two things cannot remain in the same place at the same time.
Well, how about this? Like, the sole purpose, I believe, in government is to protect the citizen's safety. We're not protecting the citizen's safety by importing illegal aliens, and we don't know who they are. If we wanted, quote, diversity, like we said, we could use the diversity visas. There's 55,000 diversity visas issued every year in the United States. And that's for someone who has a skill, like they're a mason or they sidewall or they're whatever, they're skilled in giving MRIs, whatever it is, or they have a 4-year degree in experience. So this wasn't about diversity.
No,
I mean,
not at all.
this was an
Well,
invasion.
So here's the problem, and this is one of the reasons why I firmly feel that we are at some point headed towards a national divorce in one way or the other. You say words that mean a certain thing to you, but the other side doesn't view them that way. Like, you are saying things like the government should only exist to keep its citizenry safe. But the leftists believe that the things that they are pushing for do in fact keep the citizenry safe, because it gives people that think they're born in the wrong bodies the ability to experience life the right way. They believe that people should have the ability to love whoever they love regardless of consequences, which nobody wants to talk about what a slippery slope that is, because you notice they don't bring age up at all in that equation anymore.
Well, I think they purposely don't bring up age. And in Massachusetts, we had a state senator that actually made bestiality illegal. Like, seriously? So we called the state house and asked them, like, is this bill about bestiality? They're like, oh, well, we don't see that. I'm like, well, when you see animals and sexual activity in the same paragraph, like, why are we trying to purposely degrade? And we are, because I see it in my kids. I have arguments with my kids. I'll be driving somewhere. I was in CVS and this kid looked like a girl, and I swear it was a girl until he spoke. And his name was like an androgynous name. Like, my daughter's name is Kyle, but she's definitely a girl 100% through and through. And I said to this kid, well, you look just like, and I pointed to the, like, People magazine. You could be that girl's sister. He was like, thank you. And when we left, my kid was like, why did you have to do that? Like, he's still, like, seriously, like, not talking to me now. Like, why did you have to do that? I'm like, I didn't know. I thought it was a girl. She's like, didn't you see his name tag? It was like Duncan or something. I'm like, your sister's name is Kyle. Like, I'm sorry. Like, it's weird to me. I don't have any ill will towards anyone that feels like they're in the wrong body or whatever. But I just don't think we should change our whole national policy.
No, I mean, well, that's the thing. Because we have been of the mind that all we want to do is get along with these people for so long, we've been the ones giving and giving and giving and giving, to the point where now the second we finally say we're not willing to go any further, well, you're just not willing to work with us anymore. No, you've pushed us too far. It's not about not wanting to work with you anymore. It's about time and time again, when we have tried to work with you, you get everything you want, we get nothing. I mean, you can go back as far as Reagan in 84. Reagan signed amnesty because he was promised by the Democrats if he cleared the decks, they would finally reform immigration so that we could have a working system that wasn't being manipulated all the time. And he cleared the decks and they didn't do it anyway. This is why we've started to have such animus, because up until then, even Reagan said, and talking about Tipper Gore, was like, hey, we may go at each other from 8 to 5, but after 5 o'clock, if we want to go have a beer, we're fine with that. And everybody was cool with that back then. But the problem is you can't do that anymore because everybody has become so ideologically charged to a point, and it's because both sides have gotten to the point where they think they're the only ones that are right. And it's one of the things that used to drive me crazy because I started doing this a long time ago. A lot of people don't know, but I started doing this in 2009. It was shortly after, it was right before Obama got sworn in. The economy was already killing my business. I had to go to work somewhere that I didn't want to go to work for. So I started venting on Facebook, and then eventually it turned into everything that it is now. But the thing about it is, all the way back then, I kept trying to convince everybody, look, there's about 7 or 8 issues that if we could just put those aside for 5 minutes, we could agree on about 85% of the things that are making this country horrible right now. Nobody wanted to do that. Still to this day, nobody wants to do it. That's just like Donald Trump did something that the anti-abortion crowd has said they've wanted done for as long as I've been alive, which is to get abortion back to the states. Now they're pushing the issue that they want a national ban. That's not what they talked about. That's not what they've ever talked about. But now that they got the ground that they wanted, now they want the government to do the hard work for them instead of taking the battle back to the states and actually making the changes where it could and should matter. If we can make the changes at the state level to teach kids why abortion should be a definite, only ever last resort, because even me being 100% pro-life doesn't believe that it shouldn't ever happen. It should just be very, very rare. It shouldn't be this thing where.
Well, I think wasn't it rare, safe, and
Yes.
there was a third.
Safe, legal, and rare.
Right. And I remember that James Madison wrote, in framing a government which is to be administered by men over men, the great difficulty lies in this: you must first enable the government to control the governed, and in the next place, oblige it to control itself. Well, they haven't controlled themselves.
No, all they've done is, and this is why I blame both parties, because what happened is during the Civil War, we had our first ever actual national income tax. They passed it because it was the only way to get everything funded. It was temporary. They had to vote to keep it. Eventually, they repealed it. So shortly after that, that was repealed, every 2 years, the new Democratic crowd would come to the new Republican crowd and say, we need that progressive income tax back. We need it back. We need it back. We need it back. Well, it was just like the old cartoon with Spike and the little dog. Eventually, the little dog finally, and Spike just says, fine, let's go do it. So that's what they did. They were like, look, okay, this is what we'll do. We'll put it to a vote of the people. If they amend it as an amendment to the Constitution, then you're going to get what you want. And everybody needs to remember that how the Democrats sold that is the same way they sell it now. This is only going to be the top. This is only going to be for the top 1% of the country, and it's only going to be 1% of their income. And that's why the Republicans lost the debate nationally, because everybody kept pushing it. It's not really going to impact you. It's only going to impact the rich. It's not really going to impact you. It's only going to impact the rich. So 30 some odd % of the states said, it's not going to hurt us. Let's do it. Now look at where we are.
Well, do you believe in the trickle-down system?
I do, because it worked.
Yep. Because there's some Democrats I've spoken to that have run for Congress that the system used to be a trickle-down system, but now the money is held in the hands of a few families. And so it's not necessarily a trickle-down theory, but I believe it's all a trickle-down theory. I mean, first of all, what they do to people who don't make $1 billion a year is make them hate the rich, so it's easier to tax them. That's one of Alinsky's rules for radicals. Is
right out of the rules for radicals playbook.
Right, is to have a class differentiation and say, yeah, America is land of opportunity and land of freedom, and you should be able to make as much money as you want. But when you make X amount of dollars, we don't like you. So,
Well, that's part of the mindset change, because I remember even when I was a kid in mid 70s, there it was, you would see somebody driving down the road in this really nice car, and I remember having the conversation with my dad almost word for word, because he could see. And it was different for me because my dad used to work in a body shop. He worked with my grandfather. My grandfather actually owned a body shop when I was a kid. So we were tooling around in a car that they'd worked for, because they had done some work on the engine and then done some work on the outside. So we were test driving everything to make sure that it worked. And it was one of the first times I remember ever being in a car, and this is probably 76, 77, with electric windows. So I'm just sitting there, just
Oh, I
pushing
never.
the button, watching the windows go down, pulling it back, watching it go up. And my dad's like, "You like that, huh?" And I was like, "Yeah,
Mm.
it's pretty awesome," because I'm used to having to crank on windows and got the little wing windows in the truck and everything else. And he's like, "Well, this is America. You figure out a way to do it, and you work hard enough, and eventually you could have a car with these same kinds of bells and whistles too." But that's not what we teach our kids anymore. Now you see the same conversation being played out all over the place, and it's dad and son, or mom and son, or mom and daughter walking down the road, and they see this guy in this big ass limo, and son's got a glint in his eye, and all of a sudden the parent looks down at the kid and is like, don't worry, we'll get them out of that limo one of these days, because it's not fair for them to have it either.
Right? Well, what's going on in Massachusetts is they used that COVID, whatever that COVID rule, that you didn't have to put bids through the regular procurement process. So that allowed even more corruption, because our Massachusetts governor gave an unbid document to the friend of a state senator from Cape and Islands, a $6 million bid to transport illegal aliens from A to B or wherever the hell they want to go. I saw this guy today. It broke my heart. He was mentally challenged. I was at the hospital to pick up a prescription, and I noticed him, and I thought, you know what? Don't say anything. He's probably whatever, crazy beans, or don't get involved. But then I was at the red light, and I saw him walking past me, and he had holes in his shoes and sweatpants. And finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I was in traffic for so long. I pulled over, and I said to him, "Do you need any help?" And he goes, he was definitely challenged mentally. He said, "I do this twice a day. I live on School Street, the third house on the left." And I said, "Okay, I saw you, and I wanted to see if you needed any help." He goes, "I do this twice a day." Like, he was adamant. He was in a stroller, like had a walker. He was hunched over. He had sweatpants on with boat shoes with holes in the toes. And he says he does this twice a day. And I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, like, what's this guy going to do when it snows? And I was heartbroken that he was challenged, and that we're giving all this money to illegal aliens. And this guy makes this trek from the hospital to his house on School Street, which is at least a mile, twice a day. What are we doing?
I Well, I mean, honestly, that's one of the things that I have had the most complaints about. If we've got billions of dollars that we can be sending to places like the Ukraine, where they're basically laundering money for the Bidens,
Right.
then why are we not helping the people that need help here?
And why are we spending money on, like, the life expectancies of Paleomenides, when the whatever environmental challenges there are, when we could be giving this guy a ride? I mean, this guy's clearly mentally challenged. I would guess he was 40. He was polite. He said, "Thank you. I can do it myself." Like, that's a guy that needs some help. He had holes in his shoes, and he's wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt and a walker, hunched over. And I just felt obligated to stop and be like, I didn't know until I spoke to him if he was going to be a nut. And when I spoke to him, he was very polite. He was obviously mentally challenged, and had holes in his shoes.
It's sad what we've come to.
Yeah.
When you think of people like that man, and all the other people that you see in this area, like up and down Main Street, I think every business almost has homeless people in their doorways,
Yeah.
and they're constantly calling to have them removed. And so they move. So the police go out and their hands are kind of tied, because I know the community impact unit will try to find them housing, and they'll call all the shelters and they'll go to the shelters with them, but there are no beds for them. So why are we creating all this housing for illegal immigrants?
Well, none of that. Like,
and
why do we
not
have
taking care of
our own
our own?
people? And that
Exactly.
just makes me so sad. Like, I mean, people are people, yes, but where do we draw the line, Rick?
Oh,
Where-
look who's finally here.
Huh?
I finally made it, believe it or
Oh,
not.
Diane, hello.
This has been hell on earth. What a day.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, we missed you today. Carrie had a family emergency that she had to attend to, but Matt Moratori was on and basically told us why he did a commercial with Democrats. You know, and I was saying that I wonder if the Republican Party, not speaking about Matt Moratori, but if we can be more accepting of candidates and making funds more available to them and not be chosen by just the Mass GOP.
I think, and we've always spoke about that, where it should be up to the voters to decide, not the party. You
Yeah,
know?
but when they're not promoted, you know, when they're not, when the candidates aren't promoted, or their narrative, like Ian Kane, their narrative has been set for them before they even have a chance. I think that we're disenfranchising voters, much like the unwritten rule. I think we're in the same place. And Matt Moratori wants to say that, you know, Amy Carnevale and Judy Crocker are uniters. You know, I wholeheartedly disagree with that. What's your opinion?
I completely disagree with it. I think they, similar to how the National Party used to be, which I think has changed since new leadership with like Laura Trump and others. It's no longer who has the most money. I think it's more who is appealing more to citizens. I mean, people are now not voting for who has the biggest pocketbook. They're now voting on what they resonate with, and what they can do for them personally.
But I'm kind of pissed that the Mass GOP specifically has pushed a U.S. Senate candidate has an admitted criminal past,
Well, it's
Uh,
appalling.
and put him forward. And for me, that diminishes my faith in the Mass GOP, because why would you back a candidate who's admittedly framed his sister, stabbed himself, while a federal prosecutor, while a Marine Corps attorney? I mean, it doesn't get more American run-blooded than a U.S. Marine Corps attorney. But then when you add the fact that he committed a crime and perjured himself, even though he says he wasn't under oath.
Well, ask yourself this when it comes to the Mass GOP, and ask yourself, have they put
Lost you, died. Rick, do you have her?
Hold on, I'll be right back.
Oh, I got you.
Am I back? What I
Yes.
was going to say, what I was saying is, ask yourself about the Mass GOP and the party right now as it is, and all of the vacant seats that they didn't bother to put any candidates forth all over the state of Massachusetts. I mean, in every single district, there are empty seats. No one is running against Democrats, period. They're just literally open. It's like they've rolled over and given up. And that's not fair to the people out there that want to run, when they don't get the support that they feel they should, obviously need. It's in their hands. You know that. But it's an embarrassment that so many Senate seats and so many House seats have no one running. No one at
Yeah,
all.
that's
And
true.
then
I mean,
they're
how
forced
about
to do a write-in campaign. It's an embarrassment.
Right. And we had that situation here for a state rep, Jerry O'Connell, who did a write-in candidacy, and he's on the ballot. But then we also have, we lost all these seats in 2022 in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. We lost the district attorney's race. We lost the sheriff's race. We lost a state rep seat. And it's really hard to recover from that because now we have the person, Susan Moran, who vacated the seat that Matt Moratori and Carrie McCray are running for. And she's basically a shoo-in for the clerk of courts after we have a Democrat district attorney, Rob Galliboy, who has lost 35 employees since he's been elected. I mean,
Holy
that says a
crap.
lot. If you're losing 35 employees, man, you screwed up somewhere. You're not a good manager. That means you have never supervised people before. I mean, imagine if I had 35 people that wanted to transfer out of my command. I'm sure that people would look at me and say,
Yeah.
"She's screwing up,"
No kidding.
right?
By the way, Rick, I really am digging this red wine picture that you have here on the
Me
restream.
too.
I'm
I
You're
kind of
wanna
welcome.
test
thinking, I'm kind of
every.
thinking that that might be something we need to rebrand.
Oh, I love it.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So I was saying, Diane, earlier that discussing with Rick about how the Republican Party, at least in Massachusetts, has decided, if you don't support Trump, that you're not worthy of support, which, I kind of think that we have to think locally instead of, down ballot from President Trump, because I think there's always going to be dissension in the ranks, but I don't think that I think we should look at all the qualities of a candidate really as open-mindedly as we can and say, is this person qualified? Is this person going to do what the people want? Does this person have a history of being honest and truthful? Because I think that's important. I think that's
Absolutely.
important.
It's absolutely important.
But when we post it on our Double D Uncensored Facebook page, some people disagree with facts and truthfulness and they get upset.
Well,
Facebook is a hate farm now, anyway. So
Yeah. But we try to inform people as well as we can. There's so many elderly people out there that don't even have Facebook, and someone called me today and said, can you send me the link to your podcast so that I can send it in my email to my friends that aren't on Facebook? That's a lot of people.
oh,
And
yeah, a
how do
lot
you
of
reach
people
those
are,
people with a $20,000 mailing all across the state? I mean, that's what John Deaton's doing. And it's all going into the pockets of political consultants, and he's not going to win.
no. I mean, I'd be embarrassed if he won. I don't,
I mean,
and
I
I know
wouldn't be
everybody's
embarrassed
like,
if he won. I'd be shocked because Elizabeth Warren has a war chest, and typically all corporate and educational institutions, they, no matter what they're leaning, they donate to the incumbent.
it's embarrassing if that guy wins, because I'm sorry, is that the best the Mass GOP can bring forth for a candidate?
No, it wasn't the best, but it was the one who had the money.
Yeah, and that's what I'm talking about. He's an embarrassment.
Well, he's a criminal. If what he says is true in his book, he's a criminal, and he should be disbarred. And that's what people like. Someone asked me from Hingham Republicans. They said, "Do you really think he's worse than Elizabeth Warren?" I'm like, "Is that our bar? Do they have to be worse than Elizabeth Warren, who was practicing law without a license in Massachusetts?" I mean,
Oh my God.
I don't know. I think we need to get in the schools and make sure that they're teaching
Civics.
civics and the Constitution and how people are elected to office. And we got way too much emotion in this. For someone who comes from a law enforcement background, we got way too much emotion in this world. We don't arrest people because we feel bad.
All I'm gonna say about Liz Warren is y'all can have her. You're
But
welcome.
we don't want her. She was an interloper, just like John
You'll
Deaton.
have to
We
excuse me.
we didn't want her either. That's why we sent her your way.
No, thank you.
Thanks, bud.
My
But
cat stepped on my phone and disconnected me.
oh my God.
Henry, pain in my
Uh,
butt.
He thought he heard a Haitian. Don't judge.
Well,
I know.
Gary McCrae wasn't able to come on tonight, Diane, but we did say that, she did an outstanding job, I have to
Oh my
say.
gosh, yes. 40, was it 48 votes that separated them?
39, I think.
Wow.
And, Matt Mortori, I have to give it to him too, because, he came on and, I didn't, I didn't smash him because,
There really was nothing.
because
smashed.
there was nothing to smash. We really wanted to know, will you support Carrie if she wins? Will Carrie support you if you win? So there wasn't any trick questions. There wasn't anything like that. Like, we are here to promote Republicans. And he was brave enough to come on. Some Republicans aren't. Some Republican candidates aren't. We've invited them numerous times. Some Republican operatives we've invited to come on. And
Well, I mean, he gave an explanation as to why he, supported or however he did with the Democrats. Bottom line is, if he wins, I hope he represents the people that he needs to represent.
well, he's going to be held, if he wins, his feet are going to be held to the fire, just like Carrie's would be.
Yep.
Friendships are friendships, but when you're representing a community or communities, and we're talking about people who are spending millions of dollars of our taxpayer funds, and we are being
Yeah.
taxed out the backside in
Oh,
Massachusetts.
yeah. And you
Uh,
know what? Think about all those people that have taken their vacations using their EBT cards in Hawaii or the Virgin Islands or wherever else they're going. They said EBT transactions were done in every single state using Massachusetts EBT cards.
Right, and
They're supposed to have an oversight. They're supposed to have an oversight board for that. They're supposed to contact the state if they're going out of state and they plan on potentially using their EBT cards. So I'd like to know who in the state of Massachusetts approved these.
well, I would like to know that too. I mean, I can't imagine.
Do you know who the perfect person to ask that is?
Diane DeZoglio.
You better believe it.
You know what? I really hope that she does come on our show because,
Yeah.
like I said before, like, she is my favorite Democrat. Actually, I
She's
have
like
a
a
friend.
Tulsi Gabbard.
Tom, you're my favorite Democrat, and Tom knows who he is from Massachusetts. But he is my favorite. But she's my favorite female Democrat. Not to like break things down into gender, but I admire her. I admire her tenacity. I admire how she wielded power with her sexual harassment case. I wish I had known some of the political insider whatever behaviors that she exhibits when I had run, because she was a class act. She was a class act while she was shoving it up their backside, and you know
And
what I mean.
and now she has the gall to say that she wants to audit, the House and the Senate of Massachusetts, who has all their stuff behind closed doors. So
Right? And do you think Anthony Amori, a sycophant of the Mass GOP, would have done the same thing? No,
Probably
I think
not.
he would have gone along to get along. And if I'll take people on face value until they prove me otherwise. But Diane DeZoglio, in taking on the state auditorship, for whatever reason she took it on, it's a personal oath. They take a personal oath to be the state auditor.
Mhm.
And I'm a big proponent of oaths. I took an oath when I joined the military. I took an oath when I joined the state police. I took an oath when I was married. And I do believe in oaths. And she took an oth to do what's right for the state.
I just didn't put obey in my language when I got married.
I didn't put obey either. But you know what? I got married in Belize, and I found my marriage license the other day. They call me a freaking spinster. They're like, occupation state trooper spinster. I'm like, F you, freaking spinster. Man, I was hot when I got married. There's no way that anybody would have called me a spinster. I'm so mad.
Well, you don't even fit the definition, though. You've been married, you have kids, you're not a spinster.
Well, I'm not anymore, but accordingly, I was at 36 years old with a career all of my own as a state trooper. undercover narcotics officer, whatever, homicide investigator. I went to go get married. I was reduced to a state trooper / spinster. And my husband was not like he didn't have any name.
Bachelor.
Yeah, bachelor, but I was a spinster. I'm like, Jesus, like that's got such a negative connotation to it. Like I think of Mrs. Kravitz, like Alice Kravitz. She's married, but she's a spinster. Like Carly Robichaud, she's a spinster.
Watch out, she'll sue you.
Dun dun
Boom, boom,
dun.
boom.
All right,
like
guys.
spinster, right? I don't know.
So
Well,
we'll
you.
talk
Rick,
about
for-
that. We're gonna, yes, because we're gonna hopefully hear from Todd Lyons. So hopefully we can get him to come back on from ICE because he's had some great arrests and stuff. And
And Todd is the Boston director, the Boston field director of enforcement removal operations.
right. And you remember him, Rick, when he was on before. Because he's had
He's a
some pretty
Boston
high
boy.
profile. Yeah, he's had some pretty high profile arrests
Rapes of
lately.
children.
Yeah. So we reached out to try and get him on, and we have a few other things that we're working on up our sleeves too.
Yeah, Dixie says there was an arrest on, was it Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, of a rapist, another rapist?
Yeah.
And and they actually honored the
Duke's Sheriff's Department, right?
So, I would like to know if there's a way that we can find out who has not authorized the ICE detainers.
Well, here's the thing, which, I'm sure you read the news, whatever, but 2 of the Venezuelan gang members in Aurora, Colorado, they actually let out on bail, and they would not honor the ICE detainers that ICE had them. These are 2 gang members that were part of the ones that took over that apartment building and everything, and they let them out
because these
$1,000
California
bail.
people moved to Colorado, ruined Colorado. Then, before that, they moved to Portland and ruined that place.
And Seattle.
Democrats are the human equivalent of locusts.
I think the female white liberal is the greatest threat to society at this point.
Oh,
With
they're
their pants and their SUVs and their ponytails and picking up their
do you want to hear the latest that has me over the edge?
Yeah.
The latest that has me over the edge in New Hampshire, because they're running all these ads against like Kelly Ayotte and everything. They're now basically stating the medically, as they call it, I had to have a medically induced abortion when my child died, say at 6 months old or whatever. And I'm like, excuse
That's not
me.
an abortion.
Exactly. You tell me any woman who has miscarried a child, okay, or a child that has died in vitro, whatever, that calls it a medically induced abortion, because I can assure you they don't. I don't. And I think it's disgusting and appalling that it's a Democrat. She used to be for the House rep in New Hampshire, whatever, but it's a PAC that's affiliated with Chris Pappas, who's our congressman here. And it's like these ads are running nonstop. And it's like, seriously, I think it's an insult. And I would say that the majority, 99% of women who have lost a child due to miscarriage, or a child dies, they don't call it a medically induced abortion.
Right. You had a live, I don't want to say a birth, but the baby was not alive. A stillborn.
Yes, but they're talking about